Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Good Morning Soul. And I'm just feeling so good. Like, I don't know, like, obviously, like, I'm scheduling these ahead of time. I don't know, like, what the viewership is gonna be or, like, the audience. But, like, getting this new microphone and all that went from, like, okay, I have like 365 projects I can do immediately, which are like each episode of Good Morning Soul. And then I have like the 10 big projects that I've been like waiting to do because I don't have a microphone. So I've been waiting for a microphone to do those projects. And then like I just got done finishing like a big ass project that's been taking me like weeks. Like it feels so good. And after that, like there's like 30 other things that I can do, like just right off the bat, and that's on top of like my infinite back burner. And one thing that I can also do is work on thumbnails. That is the topic of today's Good Morning Soul, is the thumbnails. And really, if you want to be successful on YouTube, good titles and good thumbnails are like bread and butter, right? And like if you have shareable content that has a good title, good thumbnail, like you're like gonna be miles further than anyone else. And you know, like when I tell people like if you're trying to get into YouTube, like my advice is obviously just to do it and just to like throw everything you have into it and then like kind of find yourself in the process. But at the same time, when you start, you should set fundamentals so you're not just like gonna be terrible right from the start. It's something that takes a lot of practice, and one of the things that you can do to like get that foundation is like get Photoshop like immediately and get good thumbnails. You don't need Photoshop to make a good thumbnail. Like back when I got this new computer, like I didn't have Photoshop for a while, and I would just I would do it on my laptop, but sometimes when I was feeling lazy I would just make the thumbnails in my editing software. And you know what, if I remember, I'm gonna try to have just a bunch of thumbnails that I've made in this video. But I've made some really good thumbnails in my video software. You know, that sometimes is even easier than Photoshop when it comes to like color correction and like just getting like bright colors from the saturation and stuff like that. It's a lot harder to crop and do stuff like that, but it is easier for like green screen, etc. But if you ever want to know how to make good thumbnails, there is like kind of a formula that like most YouTubers do follow. The big thing is to have a person's face. Like a person's face is gonna be like half of your thumbnail. That's how, if you look at YouTube across the board, a person's face is half the thumbnail with big bold letters, with like a bright, but like not too like just like have like bright as in like a good like watchable orange, not orange, blue. I don't know why I said orange. Like a light blue color. Or like just like I'll have like dark or like just YouTube red. That's also another good one for your background color. Gradients are also really good. Like what's an example? Well, if you just look up just how to make good thumbnails, like just have like a gradient going from one color to another on just like a blurred background. That's another amazing good one. And again, a character's face, a face that preferably has some kind of emotion that matches the title. Like if it's like, "What happened to me today? OMG!" exclamation point. And then you have a surprised like face that looks really good, and match that up with like I assume font or whatever it is you're trying to highlight in the video. And if you're talking about like anime, like have like a sexy ass anime like girl in the thumbnail. If you're talking like I'll have like a female character who's like a side character sometimes in the thumbnail, just for like the sake of it, because it's more clickable. I'm not like the best guy to talk to about this because no one's gonna watch my videos regardless. If I was like a big ass channel, I would be able to tell like from the viewership like which thumbnails work and which ones worked. But you know, I've made some videos that were able to get, you know, a decent amount of views just based off of like just my thumbnail, right? So I know that there's a good formula to it, and if you're gonna be talking about like a movie, have like the most iconic like picture, or the most iconic like when people think of like The Dark Knight, you're probably gonna think of that one picture of Batman where he's like standing in front of the tower, or you're gonna think of the Joker when he's coming out of like the side of the car, or when he's like standing in the road. So if you have that in your thumbnail, then that's all the more like great. And it doesn't have to be overly complicated. Like, I'm sure if you look up a bunch of videos, like look at Watch Mojo for instance, they just have like a screenshot of whatever the fuck they're talking about that day. And just a screenshot works. A lot of the time, a lot of views, you'd be surprised. Like, people will be like, let me review this manga like chapter, and they'll have a screenshot from the manga. You'd be surprised how many people click on that video thinking it's that chapter of the manga, like in video format. Or even like, this will improve your chances of copyright, but like if you're doing like an episode review of a show, or if you're talking about that anime and you have a screenshot from the anime, you're gonna get like a decent amount of people who actually think like that's the product, right? And you know, doesn't hurt your numbers. But yeah, if I were to get give advice, like if you can get fan art, like really sexy ass fucking fan art. For an example, I have a guy who I've done a podcast with before called Psy. Type in SYY. He has some really good, just like I don't even know where I assume it's fan art, but it's like really fucking sexy photos. Stuff like that works really well as long as it's like eye-catching. And you know, if you can get one that matches all of these boxes: sexy fan art, girl in the cover, like you know, a human's face reacting to the title, big ass letters, gradient background, blurred with light colors that are like clickable colors. There's definitely some colors that work and some that don't. Make sure, like, I obviously don't follow these rules to a T. I make too many videos and I don't have enough time, and I don't think it's like a big difference for me. But like the colors, like make sure the font and like the background font and the font of the font color and the background color, make sure that they're like contrasting, like good colors that work together. And you know, if you can get all of this in one, then you have like the perfect thumbnail. I know I have like a couple thumbnails, like I'm more proud of the thumbnail than the video, like just cause like how sexy it turned out. And you know, you're not gonna look at your video all the time, but you are gonna look at your thumbnails, so you might as well try to get really good thumbnails. And I know it's like some people's least favorite thing, and some people like look at grade A under A, like guys like that. You don't need great thumbnails, but it's gonna improve like your shit a lot. And guys like Game Theory, that's another example of someone who like is doing a great job with their thumbnails. Like dimensions, that's another really good thing. Like in Photoshop, like this is something that's much easier to do in Photoshop, like layers. If you have like something in the front, but like if you're able to tell that there's different like things in the background, the middle ground, and the foreground within the photo itself, it gives it kind of like a deeper dimension. It like lets your eye kind of like take a second to understand everything that's going on in the photo. And there's this guy called Dobbs who makes Pokemon videos. He's an example. He'll just have like a thing around whatever it is. Like he'll have a couple of Pokemon in the thumbnail, but he'll have like them like layered so that they're like, just look them up for example. Like it'll be layered to the point where you're like there's different dimensions in the foreground, the background. But yeah, I think that's everything I have to say about thumbnails. Another guy, Blue Lava 6, he has really great thumbnails. For an example, Eden, who is another YouTuber I've worked with, that's an example of like someone who has like really artistic thumbnails and thumbnails that are like the colors and everything, stuff like that. If you're going to have just like I know I'm not a great example, but like themes are also really good. Like for instance, like my theme for my first 100 reviews was like whatever I'm talking about. Like if I'm talking about a Harry Potter movie, then I would have Harry Potter like on the side, and then me reacting to the movie with a dumbass face, and I'd have like the letters. That's like some foreground background stuff. The words would be in the background. Harry Potter would be in the middle ground, and I would be in the foreground. And my colors in the background would match. Like I would have music reviews would be purple, game reviews would be blue, anime reviews would be red, and that kind of just like when people click on videos, the dopamine that like comes from the video happens when they click on the thumbnail. Like the thumbnail is what triggers the dopamine, not watching the video. That is a scientific like thing. So having thumbnails that match like a theme, like if people are used to clicking on a certain type of thumbnail, they're probably gonna click it more often, unless like your video pisses them off, and then they're just like, unless there is no like reward to their like, because it's like a service reward thing. They do it and they get rewarded for a good video. That's like the aftermath dopamine effect, right? So that part comes on you on whatever content it is you're making. But just have good thumbnails, I guess, is the point of the video. I don't know where I was going with all that, but look at the theme for this series, Good Morning Soul. Like I just took a bunch of images and I put a Photoshop filter on them, and then that becomes like the aesthetic for the show. And you know that filter I put on it, you know, I'll use some of the other ones that I did for this series. Like I'll add certain color corrections and stuff that like will remind the viewer, like, hey, you're interested in this type of like photo. This photo will trigger like a memory, and it'll go into a rhythm that you'll go on from a day-to-day process. If I was just putting up random images, then you know it's gonna be a little harder to get into that rhythm. But yeah, that's the science to it, the little bit that I know. I'm sure there's probably more about it. Like for instance, like having probably the most like clickable characters in your thumbnail. If you're talking about Transformers, you probably want Megan Fox in there. If you're talking about Skyrim, you probably want a dragon in there. If you're talking about like, even if you're like, let's say you're talking about a Studio Ghibli movie, it doesn't hurt to have Hayao Miyazaki in there. Stuff like that. Like if people don't know the characters, like give them something else that they understand. And a lot of people are gonna say this: the thumbnails don't matter. Like your content matters, as long as you can get them to your content. I know that's clickbait, and I try not to do like clickbait, but like sometimes you just gotta give them something. But anyway, if you want, like for my Soultober, where I had a video every day for October, some of those thumbnails like are perfect examples of what I'm talking about. But anyway, this went on a little bit longer than I thought it would, but thank you so much for watching. As always, I'll see you guys tomorrow morning, and with that, I leave you.